and start to rise.
Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. I am your host Shenell Felix, and guys, we are back with much more interesting topics and conversations. Now, we've heard some interesting questions being asked by the All Tobago Fisherfolk Association, led by President Curtis Douglas. You know, he's been asking the questions as it pertains to what we're seeing happening with the U.S. being in that Venezuelan water space that's very close to Trinidad and Tobago, and the recent airstrike that took place. Good morning, Mr. Douglas, and welcome.
Good morning, and good morning to all the viewers, local and also international.
So you've been asking the questions that the people want to know. You know, what is Tobago's position on the United States airstrike that took place recently, and them being present in waters that are so close to where Tobago fishermen are fishing? Recently with that airstrike, it was suggested that the attack was on persons who are in the drug trade, related to that. But you are asking, where are all leaders to defend the fishermen that may be out on waters, that may be innocent in situations where the United States has identified these boats as being a threat? Tell us a bit about where that fear resides among the fishermen, and why you felt the need to really come out and raise that concern.
Now, my duty is to represent not only the fishermen, but also people of Tobago as a Tobagonian. And I just want to make it very clear, Shenell. There is no mistake. There is a serious drug trade between Venezuela and TNT. Let people don't believe or think for a while that, the evidence is not true. We've been warning them for years about this.
And the Colombian drug cartel is also a part of the target that they are trying to eradicate in this whole fight against drugs.
Correct. And it is true, because they all pass through Tobago waters, and they use Tobago as a catalyst to do a lot of things. I mean, even when the jetty was operating in Plymouth with the gas station, we used to see numerous speedboats, right? And some of them was open about it, right? So it's not new news, it's old news. But old news start to come to reality, and a lot of people start to see what is really taking place. And when they talk about international waters, basically the waters of Trinidad and Tobago, it is so close to us. In fact, it is us. It is so close to us, and fishermen is scared that they are being targeted mistakenly. Because, okay, let me tell you how easy it is. A couple of months ago, a boat from Belgarden was stolen from right in the harbor of Belgarden with two big powered engines, and he was a fisherman. That was how he survived. And I would have seen that boat showed up in Venezuela and see how they catch it and whatever, crying guns and trying to destabilize the country. Rubbish. That boat was stolen by these people to do the drug trade. So what they do, they used to come to Tobago waters, steal our engine, steal the boats, and use these engines and these boats to do their drugs run. Right? Make no mistake, I'm not defending anyone. People may not like what I'm saying, but right now I'm here about the truth, and I'm here about the concern and the welfare of my children and the fisherfolk and the people of Tobago. Hence the reason why, from my information, what I have in, I'm going to let the people know as much as I can. Because when the United States performed the act, they didn't operate just like that, right? Obviously, they have some kind of intel that we are not privy to. Okay? We are not privy to. And from what I am seeing, if this is to escalate, some form of mitigated or some kind of urgency have to take place, because it is very easily that a Tobago fisherfolk or a Trinidad fisherfolk could be blown out of the water as well mistakenly.
Right. So you are asking that the chief secretary be involved in that conversation to ensure that whatever is happening out on that waters, that it definitely eliminates Tobagonians from that. So you are asking that he advocates that there is that strong differentiation mechanism between the drug cartels and drug-related runs from the average Tobago fisherman who is out on the water, just plying their trade. Talk to us a bit about that.
No, yes, I am asking, it's very ironic. I'm really asking politely, respectfully, that the chief secretary come out and say something, have a meeting with the Old Tobago fisherfolk, meet with the fisherfolk to ensure that some form of, guidance along that line. Because Tobago cannot be left out if fighting really start. We will be seeing the fireworks, and we will be seeing, God forbid, bodies wash ashore in Tobago from this incident, because they are concentrated. You know how close Trinidad is to Venezuela? Venezuela closer to Trinidad than Tobago to Trinidad. Very close. And from the high seas, what we are saying, it is quite easy. Imagine we are calling upon the chief secretary to do the honorable thing. When times are need, we know our leaders lead from the front. So we are calling upon him, not for no bacchanal, not for no rakale, but for the interest of the fishing industry. Because what will gonna happen is either we decide to tell the fishermen to stand down, or to try to fish between 10 miles and try to keep that within that perimeter. Because what we don't want Tobagonians or fisherfolk losing their lives. Because our lives are important. Because when you lose a life, it has a spiral effect down to our families and friends. So we need to preserve Tobago life. So we need to have that conversation, and we need to have a plan in moving forward to protect the fisherfolk. Because make a no mistake that if this is to escalate, price of fish gonna get very high, and it's gonna be very scarce. Because now what you would see is that we may had to start to eat tuna in the tin, right, in port, because you can't risk your life.
True.
Where you see people you can't say is if we are seeing the evidence of the aggressiveness by the Americans.
Right. And as we talk about evidence, you have been cited as saying that there has been remains from that U.S. airstrike from the boat that they struck down that has washed ashore in Tobago. How can you verify this information?
Now, 4 days ago, which was probably Saturday, some fisherfolk was going out, more than one fisherfolk. Mainly, the video was taken by this guy from Palatavere. Kudos to the Palatavere fisherfolk that is paying attention to their surrounding. That is right outside Sisters, basically right outside Charlottesville, between Charlottesville and Palatavere. 10 to 11 miles. That's, Shenell, you could sit in your house, and if the boat was floating, you would have seen it quite clearly. That is all close. Now we have a draft that is coming down from on top of the Tobago Speyside come down, that bring down the flying fish, and the current come down, and that is a channel most thing come through. So hence the reason why we end up on that side. It is glaring. It is glaring. And one, if you decide, if I would have advised the fisherfolk not to even try to venture to see if there's any remains or any kind of drug, because next thing that happened, we have been watched and they have been targeted as well. So we just leave it, let it go this way. That is the Coast Guard work to do. We would have done our part, which is we intend to work with the authorities, reporting any sightings, reporting anything, and also to be cautious. It is right there. Make no mistakes. If this is to escalate, you will see bodies in the waters of Tobago.
Right. But with the level of technology that the United States has, especially when it comes to surveillance and intelligence gathering, we know that they have high-powered drones. They also use satellites to monitor the waters. Don't you think that it is a bit difficult to make the assumption that they will confuse a regular fisherman from Tobago with the drug cartels that are, either Venezuelan or Colombians that they are targeting?
You know how things operate. The drug cartel, or the mafia, as they say, or the drug cartel is a big industry. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Nothing is stopping them from creating a boat and putting TFT on it. TFT, the meaning Tobago Fisher Folks, Fisher, you understand me? TFTT, or any sign showing that this boat is registered in Trinidad, spray printing a flag on it as Trinidadian. You understand me? And trying to transport to get through the network. These people are very intelligent. So even though you have a drones and you have your technology, you still have to be cautious. You still have to be cautious. How many times you see in a war, even in Gaza, they say they're shooting missiles to kill people and they're killing people in hospitals and children dying. It is quite easy, and they have one of the state-of-the-art technologies. So one cannot take risks with their lives when coming to that. But I can say, or what type of intelligence the government of Trinidad and Tobago, what type of relationship does the Trinidad and Tobago have with, in the terms of exchanging information? I do not know, because that probably classified. But what I could say that we are at a brink whereby our whole fishing industry can collapse, and also we run the risk of losing lives of our fisher folk in Tobago. Quite clearly, it is a great deal. It is a serious thing. So who home and saying, yeah, let it this and that. One thing I want to make sure and make categorically clear: the drug trade is real, and it is serious, and it is not fake, right? And the only thing I'm a bit challenged with is the method. But who am I to say what method they should use? All I am here to say is that the Chief Secretary should reach out, or make a public statement to the people of Tobago to give them that form of reassurance that it is okay, or their lies with his intelligence we may get from the government, so that fisher folk could fish comfortable and they could go out and ply the trade. And I would advise to walk between 40, 30, and 35 and 40 miles to ensure the safety. And when you leave early in the morning, like all 4 o'clock, try to reach home back in an ample time instead of reaching home 9 and 10 o'clock. Please, at least to give your family that sense of reassurance. I know it might affect the yield, but please, safety over everything.
Understood. And, even as you have, on the behalf of the All Tobago Fisherfolk Association, requested that the Chief Secretary come out and give you that level of reassurance, what do you think can reassure fisherfolk at this time?
What will reassure fisherfolk is, being the Chief Secretary, you're supposed to be entitled to a lot of classified information, some intelligence. Let me use the terms intelligence. And you should know whether it is okay or not for your fisherfolk to be able to venture 35, 40, or even 20 miles. And if you realized there's a danger, I don't want to panic, you can tell them, stand down and let's work something. I probably give them a stipend at least to mind the family,
Right.
or whatever the case may be. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying some form of initiative to give that kind of reassurance, because you can't tell me you're in your house and you don't know what is going on in your house. You must know what is going on in your house. So, but you must have that conversation and that reassurance to the fisher folk, because you don't want panic, right? And when a man can't feed his family, it's very difficult. But a dead man, on the other hand, cannot feed his family. If you're dead, you can't feed your family. And we're trying to avoid that. So it is very important that we prepare for the worst. We must start preparing for the worst. Or, let me rephrase that, we must prepare for the best. But it must be a collaborative effort. This is not Plymouth or Canaan. No. This is Tobago and Trinidad that is facing these things. And I would have seen recently where the President of the United States say, shoot them down. Right? Shoot them down. And I'm saying, even though they shoot them down, debris will end up in the waters of Tobago, all over Tobago, because we are so close. Make no mistake.
Right. And what do we do to manage that? How do we manage the fallout from that? Specifically, if you have, dead bodies washing up on shores in Tobago, specifically on beaches where, are tourist sites. How do we manage that?
Well, how you do manage it? I mean, I will tell you. Normally, I mean, the chief secretary would have been able to say how to manage it. But let me explain how you manage it. Where you manage it, you would not use, basically, you would not use the Coast Guard, because at this time, you will need the Coast Guard to protect your borders and your boundaries, right? So what you do, it will be a collaborative effort with the Fisherfolk, with ATFA, to ensure that we scan and achieve these bodies if possible. If possible. If possible. Remember, this is not a war with Tobago or Trinidad and Venezuela. This is a war between Venezuela and drug trade and America. So some form of financial effort must be put in by the Americans, right, to ensure that there's that collaboration whereby we can retrieve some of these bodies if necessary. But by the end of the day, all of that lies in the umbrage of the Prime Minister. She has the final say. She's the one who will determine whether, based on her intelligence, whether she's going to work with the Fisherfolk or going to work with the Coast Guard. This is just from my perspective, from my vast intelligence, seeing how we're gonna treat with it, how easy it is to treat with it, right? And also, even though we have a lot of bodies, we have to understand where the current would take these bodies. Some would come ashore, some will go adrift, probably go to Grenada.
Yeah, I mean, but even let's just say we have persons traveling on the fast ferry between Trinidad and Tobago. It could be a bit traumatizing to look out on the water and see remains floating, just as you are traversing between the two islands, even for tourists that are coming to the island via the fast ferry. I can't imagine being at the beach and then, you feel somebody hit you and you realize that
it's serious.
It's a very serious situation.
This whereby ATFA comes in collaboration. That's why I said it's a effort. It's a team effort to ensure that we not only protect our beaches, but protect that type of scourge that will happen to our society and our community. And once we have the coordinates and the sightings, we can work along with also the Coast Guard, because you don't want to take the Coast Guard, because now we'll be in a sense of panic where people will be, probably Venezuelan, be trying to come to Tobago for refuge or whatever the case may be. Because I would have seen a clip where Venezuelan armed on their pirogues and stuff going to sea, and it is quite easily that these vessels and these people could be floating in the waters of Tobago and Trinidad. But it must be an effort between ATFA and the THA and the government of Trinidad and Tobago, led by the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Bissassa.
Excellent. And even as we round up our discussion this morning, finally, from the perspective of Tobago citizens, you are saying that, we should not be alarmed, we should not be panicked. But how do you think that we should treat with the situation, even on an individual level? How should we be looking at it? Specifically, you represent the fishermen who, as you indicated earlier on in our conversation, you see things out on the water that we don't see.
Correct.
So what do you advise?
I advise seriously to pay attention. And it is not a joke. This is a life-threatening situation. We are sitting back quite relaxed, and don't understand the tension or the possibility of a serious outbreak of war and dead bodies floating in our island. We need to start to pay attention of getting our kits ready, try to provide our food security, because with that it will affect our imports. It will. So we have to start to be very cautious. From the information that I have, it is serious and it is on the brink of breaking. So I'm saying, people, let us don't sit by and say like, God is a Trini. He may be a Tobagonian, but by the end of the day, we must be very careful and pay attention and be alert and mind your business. With the blink of an eye, you could see this thing escalating to something huge, which is already huge. Be very careful.
Understood. And we're glad that you can, kind of bring us some insights from the perspective of the fisherfolk, because they are the persons who think that this is being blown out of proportion. It's not that big of a deal, and it's basically a conspiracy that the United States is in this territory looking for oil and gas or for any other assets, or to have that type of political interference in Venezuela, but using the drug trafficking or the drug trade as an excuse to do so. But you are saying, from the perspective of fishermen, you have seen time and time again the evidence that this war on drug trafficking and crime on the water is a real one that should not be taken for granted.
Shenell, human trafficking between Trinidad and, well, Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, and the drug trade, guns and arms and drugs and fentanyl and all these drugs are being done by the high seas. Make no mistake, I'm saying it today and I make no apologies. I mean saying it because I just like to talk. I'm saying it because it's a fact. Fact. I'm seeing where Venezuelan boats used to be running Tobago fishermen from in their own waters outside Belgrade. Men had to speed up the boat to get out. Venezuelan used to be running us. We seen big exchange out there. But if you can't get close, because we don't carry gun, we don't carry arms, they do. They come and fish and carry arms. It is no joke. No, if it wasn't real, I would have said, you know, the Americans really just trying to do something that is auspicious. But no, it is very serious. This drug trade, you see how much, you know why how much people getting shot down in Tobago with guns? Guns is not coming from no containers, you know. It's from the high seas. Right there. Right there, make no mistake. A Venezuelan come by me and work, and next thing, he never can catch take a plane to come here. And then when you check it, they was in Brazil without plane. The drug trade is very serious.
Understood.
So I'm not saying this because I like to talk. I'm saying we are at a serious position, and America is not playing, and we should not take this lightly, and we should be prepared. And the Chief Secretary, like all the Prime Ministers coming out, should sit down and work out with Tobagonians, and not only the fisherfolk, with the entire populace of Tobago, the best way forward, because a storm is coming, but we must be prepared.
Understood. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time this morning and giving us a bit of insight. Guys, this is where we end off the morning show and Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Again, we want to thank you so much for being a part of this morning's discussions. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments, and all that you have been doing and continue to do to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Again, I am your host, Shenell Felix, and have a great day.